Let me hit go live. Hello everybody on YouTube. We are live. If you are listening afterwards, yes, this won't be here. So let's get started with the recording, and then we'll actually go properly live. I don't think anybody is listening right now on the YouTube. If you are, hello. But yeah, I'm gonna hit record. Hello everybody, welcome to the Sandro Linux Community Podcast. It is the 27th of October, it's nearly Halloween, and it is of course the year 2023. So today we have Crash. Say hello, Crash.
Hello everybody.
Yeah. And no Pigis or Farmer Josh today. Neither of them seem to have turned up. Pigis told me that he wasn't turning up, and Farmer Josh just hasn't turned up, so yes, we've got Crash today, and that's cool. So,
Yay.
So why don't we get on with the first story? So it's the iPhone section in the mobile news to start with. So we've only got an iPhone story this week, unless Crash wants to add a story. I don't think you do, but I don't know. But yeah, so this story is that France's iPhone 12 ban has apparently remained in place in certain territories. So apparently the iPhone ban, which took place in France, the iPhone 12 ban, is still in force in certain French provinces, certain French territories. So of course France's regulator actually banned the iPhone 12 because of radiation concerns, because the SAR level was too high, and basically they thought that it was emitting too much radiation for it to be safe by their standards, so it went over the legal limit. So that's the reason why they decided to ban it. And although France has went back on that ban after Apple actually released a modem limiting iPhone update for the iPhone 12 to fix these concerns, the French regulator, of course, did walk back on it, but certain territories have apparently kept this ban, and that includes let me see. So that includes Guyana. I don't mean Guyana. Guyana, and Reunion. I'm not great with French names, but anyway, yes. So that ban has stayed in place in certain French territories, mainly overseas, it seems. But that ban does remain in place in certain territories, and it's slightly strange that they've kept it in force in certain places because, of course, there's not really much of a risk when it comes to the iPhone 12's radiation, and they did try and fix it, and overall it wasn't really posing much of a threat, but the French regulator still put its foot down and said you can't have anything over the limit, and they banned the iPhone 12. However, now it's very unclear when the territories in France will actually unban the iPhone 12. Do you have anything to add on this, Crash?
Not really. Good on the French regulators. In my country, they would just raise the acceptable limit.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it does make sense to try and stop companies from releasing phones with too much, emitting too much radiation. However, it was barely above the safe limits, as in, it was barely out of the bounds of the safe limits. So, I don't know whether such a ban was really justified, given that they didn't give Apple the full time to respond to the issue. However, Apple shouldn't really be releasing phones which actually emit more radiation than safety standards allow, given they do have the opportunity to test their phones. I mean, the iPhone 12 was released a couple years ago now, so they've had time, but clearly they just didn't test it properly. Or maybe they just ignored the fact that regulators might cotton on to the fact that their phones emitted too much radiation. Anyway, moving on to the PC news. So why don't we talk about the main story this week first? So it's Qualcomm announcing a laptop slash kind of PC chip. So it's an ARM chip for Windows. That's a wrong story there. So let me actually pull up the right story. So sorry about that for people on the stream. Here's the right story. So Qualcomm have announced this new Snapdragon X Elite chip. So, of course, previously Microsoft had actually tried to kind of test out the idea of a Surface with an ARM chip. I think they tried it twice, to be honest. They tried it with the Surface RT, I think, and also, of course, with the Surface Pro X. However, Snapdragon has actually, so Qualcomm has actually decided to release a new chip, which is an ARM-based, with an ARM-based architecture, which actually will run on laptops. So apparently, performance-wise, it is pretty decent, although we haven't actually, it hasn't been fully tested by reviewers or anything yet, so we don't exactly have all the information on it. But, of course, it's another attempt by a PC chip maker to try and bring the ARM chip to the PC. Of course, x86 is king on the PC platform. So I don't think that will change anytime soon, but maybe potentially, maybe in 10 years' time, the ARM chips will be the more popular option when it comes to PCs. Maybe potentially x86 might go by the wayside for laptops, but of course for desktops, there's still kind of x86 is still quite a good architecture, and it's quite hard to port everything over to the ARM platform, and unless you try and do something like Apple did with Rosetta 2, where you can directly translate the program from the kind of Intel version to the ARM version, so the x86 version to the ARM version, then I think it will be quite hard to drive adoption and get developers to actually port their apps over to this new standard for PCs. However, I think it is possible, and I think that if Microsoft actually tries to do this move with some of their PCs to ARM, then I think if the will's there on Microsoft's part, then I think there is a chance that ARM could take off on the PC platform. But yeah, do you have any thoughts, Crash, on Qualcomm Pro X?
That's quite interesting. Is the goal to make the PC cheaper or faster?
I think it's the goal is to make the PC. I think it's probably going to make the PC cheaper. Although I think right now this is just being right now this chip is just available to OEMs, so they'll integrate this into their laptops or whatever, and different PC devices. However, they are trying to say using their graphs that they have comparable performance to x86 chips, and saying that they've got faster GPU performance, as you can see here. But of course, you've always got to take stuff that that manufacturers say with a grain of salt, because when it comes to their data, it's not always representative of what performance you'll actually get in the real world, and often they can be quite arbitrary with how they pick the chips for testing. And overall, we should really just wait until a device with this chip gets into reviewers' hands, because then we can actually get a proper picture of how this chip will actually perform. But yeah.
Aha, yep, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I think that's really
I do
what we
agree.
got to do. But anyway, moving on to the next story here. Let me see. Okay, okay, so the next story is in the Linux news. So it's a distro release. So not really much to note here. It's Alma Linux 9.3 beta. So this is another release of Alma Linux in the beta stage. So if you like to try out development releases and you kind of like Alma Linux, maybe you were looking for a Red Hat alternative, and you wanted to try this operating system, and you also wanted to test out a new beta and get some feedback, then maybe you want to check out this new release. I mean, there's not really much in the release notes to note, except for a few changes when it comes to GCC getting an update, which is just, a standard update that's on all platforms, and a few other updates that just come from package updates. So not really much to note. However, it is another release of this distro, so it is something to note. Have you ever tried Alma Linux, Crash?
No, sir, not even once.
Have you ever tried Linux in general?
Nope. That's basically almost like a DOS computer.
It's more
Kinda
modern than
compared to
that.
Okay, right.
It's like
I'm not familiar with much at all, so.
Unix was back in the DOS era. Unix would have been the closest thing, to Linux, I guess, because Linux is basically the open source operating system that Linus Torvalds, he originally made a kernel, but it was based on Minix. It was based on some of the it wasn't exactly based on Minix, but it all kind of originally went back to Unix. So you might have come across Unix. If you haven't, then okay. But yeah, it's basically a modern operating system, but it's free and open source. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That explains it better.
Yep. And also, unlike Windows, there are more ways that you can kind of interface with the operating system, in the sense of you can still have a terminal-based you can still just interact with the terminal, so you can not install any sort of desktop and just use the terminal. So you can still use the computer like the olden days, I guess. But you can also install a desktop environment to have a more kind of modern look and feel. So yeah. Anyway, moving on to the gaming news. So, first of all, a story about City Skylines 2. So I quite enjoyed the original City Skylines. I haven't been able to try the new game. I don't have a PC good enough currently to run it, and you know I play on console mainly, and it hasn't released on console yet. In a previous episode, I covered the fact that it actually was delayed, the console release of the game, but apparently there have been some performance issues with the City Skylines 2 release, and Paradox Interactive, the developer, not Paradox Interactive, okay, Colossal Order, the developer of City Skylines 2, has announced that the current performance issues on PC aren't a result of the title attempting to render citizens' teeth. So apparently there was a theory that the citizens' teeth in the game were actually the thing causing performance issues on PC. However, the developers have said that this isn't true, and that apparently teeth aren't the I don't know. Teeth aren't the problem when it comes to rendering the game.
I guess we're doing a comedy show today because that's funny right there.
Yeah, it's so random. It's like, why would you think that the teeth were causing the causing the rendering problem?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, I hope eventually some of these performance issues, whether related to teeth or not, do get fixed, and it is actually ported over to console, because it does look like a pretty cool release. If you're into city building games, it's quite a cool game. If you like to kind of interact with building the city, and just seeing what you can do when it comes to growing your population and making sure there's not too much crime, or making sure that the city is well run, then that will be your kind of game.
That sounds good. I haven't played anything like that since Sims.
Yeah, The Sims. Now City Skylines 2 looks a bit more like The Sims, but it's mainly more on a kind of Sim City level when it comes to actually just being able to interact with the buildings, and not really. I think they've added a bit more citizen level kind of mechanics to the game, as in you'll actually be able to see the citizens now. But I haven't checked out City Skylines 2, so I can't really talk much about it. But with the original, there wasn't really much with the actual citizens, and it was mainly just statistics and, stuff that you built, and how much money you have, and, how things are going, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like a nice addition.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty cool to play it, because it's a good game, City Skylines, but sometimes it's not that realistic. But this looks a lot more a lot more developed, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, overall, I do wish that City Skylines added more kind of European style housing, and kind of European style cities, I more mean. Because right now, you've kind of got to build everything around roads, which is fine if you want to build an American style city. But you don't always want to build an American style city. So if you want to build more of a kind of pedestrian place, you can't really do that much with city skylines. However, I don't know about the new release. Maybe they've addressed that a little bit. Maybe they've allowed you to build buildings around pavements. But I haven't really been able to check it out. So yeah. What?
Very interesting.
Yeah. I also noticed that it's a lot based on congestion and stuff. How your city is run in City Skylines, like it focuses a lot on like the road system and such, which isn't everybody's cup of tea, I wouldn't say. So yeah. But yeah, so moving on to the game releases. So I've got one release that I wanted to talk about that seemed notable. It's actually released today. So it's UFC 5. So this is a new release of the EA Sports UFC series. So of course UFC is quite a popular kind of fighting. I don't really know what to call it. A fighting league. But yeah, but the UFC games are of course one of the many franchises that EA Sports have. So of course there's FIFA if you're into football, there's NHL for ice hockey fans, there's Madden for American football fans. But the UFC franchise hasn't been going for as long as the others. However, it has attracted quite a few players, and this new edition of the game will include some other kind of. It will basically be like most EA Sports releases, I am guessing. I don't really know what kind of features they've added, or whether it's more just keeping the UFC fighters up to date and keeping, everything up to date when it comes to who is actually, champion and stuff in different weight classes. But I don't really know much about this release, but it is another release of the quite popular UFC series. What do you think, Crash? Have you ever played the UFC games?
Not UFC, no, but Madden, yes.
Mm-hmm. I've never played Madden, but I have played UFC, NHL, and FIFA. NHL is quite a fun one.
Yeah, I've played pretty much all of the EA Sports games, just never UFC. I'm not a big fighting fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is quite a fun one. I mean, it's very technical, to be fair. I mean, UFC 4, there was a lot to do with the kind of different types of martial arts and like takedowns and like different kind of combos and stuff. So if you're into if you want a slightly more kind of UFC like thing when it comes to fighting games, so maybe if you're into, I don't know, if you're into like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, maybe it isn't your kind of thing, but of course some people who are into those games are also into stuff like UFC. So if you're into the fighters if you're into the kind of more realistic element potentially, then the UFC games might be interesting to check out. However, of course, it is an EA game, so it'll cost you probably quite a bit, and they release one like quite often. So yeah.
Yeah, indeed. I always look forward to the graphics upgrades from year to year.
Yes, the often non-existent graphics upgrades, but yeah, sometimes
Yep.
they're there. Yes, when you look at the ones from like, if you look at like FIFA 2004, and then you look at like today's FIFA, and then you realize, hang on, the graphics haven't changed that much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Until you compare them side by side, right? Like you said.
yeah. And yeah, and if you go to, like, let's say 2014, let's say, then if you look at today's FIFA versus 2014 FIFA, there's not really much graphical improvement. So yeah. Personally, I think the EA Sports releases have kind of got a bit, when it comes to especially FIFA, they're basically just updates to allow you to, play Ultimate Team or whatever. Yeah, that they've went way too much kind of in with the online aspect and the kind of pay to play aspect. Of course, that makes EA a lot more money, but I'm personally not a big fan of that kind of stuff. I mean, I enjoy, like, career mode and franchise mode on, like, FIFA and NHL respectively. Uh, does that?
Same here. Yep.
Yeah, does that exist on Madden? What's that called?
Yeah, I believe it's the same thing. Career mode. You just control one guy, take him to training camps, compete in the regular season, all that stuff.
Can you play as manager in Madden? Like, can you do managerial stuff?
It's been a long time, but I think so. Yes.
Yeah, because that's a thing in that is a thing in NHL as well as FIFA. And of course, because I'm from Britain, I'm not exactly the most well versed person in the what do you call it again? In, like, what's it called? The spending cap? I forget what it's called in NHL. You know, where you can't spend more than a certain amount on, like, players and stuff, like wages.
Salary cap.
Salary cap, that's what it's called. But yeah, so trying to allocate stuff and trying not to, go over the salary cap, that's something that you don't get in FIFA because salary caps don't exist in British sports, I guess. And so I wasn't really that aware of salary caps until I played NHL. Anyway, we are going way off track. But
That's
it is a
why
community podcast. Yeah, it's fine, to be fair. It's like, yeah, it's a community podcast. You can listen to the news. You can skip through these. I don't know how you'll be able to skip through these sections, but but yeah, but yes. Why don't we get back onto the news?
Very, very good.
Actually, Crash, have you seen any game releases? Anything that you want to add to the thing? Anything within the last week or two?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So yeah, let's move on to the broadband and cellular news. So we're first covering I don't know if this could be put in the US cellular news. I mean, it's kind of not at all to do with your phone or your broadband, but sure. So, sorry to all of the pet owners out there, especially in the US, given that this will be affecting US customers. T-Mobile has announced it will end its pet tracking service. So, Sync Up Pets will apparently, the devices that work with Sync Up Pets will no longer work with the T-Mobile network. And that's a lot of work. So, apparently this was a service that you could get where you could track your pets. However, T-Mobile is shutting off this service for their customers on November 10th this year. So you haven't really got that much notice. And effectively, your device is dead in about not that many days, in about like 14 days. So they've given you 2 weeks notice, I guess. You're no longer gonna be able to track your pets using this solution. And if you were using it, then please find something else. Don't you lose your pet because you forgot that T-Mobile was shutting off the service, and then suddenly your cat, goes wandering off and you can never find it again. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. So make sure to, update your pet tracking procedures. I don't know.
Very important to me. I have a Siberian Husky. He likes to run off.
Yeah, that sounds kind of cool. So it's a husky dog.
Yep, husky.
Cool. Yeah. I'm not gonna get into pets too much here. I used to have a cat. That was kind of cool. But if I had to get a pet, probably a dog. I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know.
Man's pet.
It's cool that you can train a dog. Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. Anyway, apart from this, there's been a lot of kind of different discussion today on the main show. Usually, I try and keep this kind of discussion to the after party or whatever we want to call it these days. But today, for this show, I guess if you're listening, you can listen a bit about, I don't know, pet tracking services or whatever. But moving on to the UK news when it comes to broadband and cellular. So OneWeb LEO has announced it has done a satellite trial for 5G mobile. So apparently it brought 5G mobile to a UK train. So OneWeb is apparently working with BT on a rural broadband trial. So in recent years, there's been a lot more, especially recently, there's been a lot more kind of movement in the UK ISP space. For quite a while, BT and their OpenReach network was basically the only game in town if you weren't going Virgin Media. So, of course, it's cool to see more ISPs out there and more infrastructure which can be used by ISPs. And of course, OneWeb here are showing a more rural way of connecting to the internet and showing kind of trying to bring faster speeds to rural areas and faster mobile speeds. But of course, this is quite a limited trial. This is just basically just a trial run or something. But apparently they did it up north in North Yorkshire, Moors Railway. So running on, I think, a relatively slow train. It doesn't look like a fast train from the photo. And yeah, so I guess their 5G mobile could connect using the satellite, and it's cool to see more development in the space. And of course, for people living out rurally, I mean, there's a lot of places in Scotland with which are quite rural, especially like Aberdeenshire and the Highlands. You know, it would be good if those kind of people could get broadband if you live, you know, kind of out there in the countryside. It's good to see more progress towards higher speeds for those consumers. Because right now, Londoners are quite spoilt for choice when it comes to. I mean, people in more central London are quite spoilt for choice when it comes to ISPs, but people in outside of London, people they don't get as good options, you know, they don't have as much of a variety of options. But of course, more development in the space of more rural places has taken place recently when it comes to mobile networks and broadband. So that's cool, I guess. What are your thoughts on this crash? I mean, nobody who ever attends this podcast is from Britain, so it's kind of, your thoughts might be quite limited on the story, but of course you can kind of give more of a US perspective, I guess. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the more people, the better. It's pretty much the same here with home internet. Lots of Verizon actually offers a cheap one now for people that can't get it.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, and overall, of course, it's less profitable to serve the rural areas, especially in the UK, because when you look at the demographics of the UK, 8 million people live in the city of London. Actually, not specifically the city of London. The city of London as a legal entity is actually like a very small space. But the overall place of London, the city of London, that's just a technicality when it comes to, the small city of London in the middle of London. But yeah, but of course, London has a very big population, a lot of people there with quite a bit of money. So, of course, those are the kind of. That small area is probably where you want to target if you want to make the most money. But it's also good to give infrastructure to the slightly more rural and slightly less powerful regions in the country. Like, for example, Birmingham doesn't have as good broadband options as London. I mean, it's still pretty good. But, yeah, of course, the capital is always ahead when it comes to broadband and cellular options. However, especially when you go up north in places like Yorkshire, options are a lot more limited. And as soon as you get to places like the Highlands and Islands, then there's really not much options. There's not really that many options when it comes to broadband. But anyway, that's
Sounds very similar to here. Yep.
what do you say? Sorry.
It sounds pretty similar to here. As soon as you get outside of the big city centers, same situation. Yep.
Yeah, and also here, because London is the capital, as well as being the kind of population and capital centre, so basically London's way better served than most regions in the country, and of course that's for a reason. However, in the US, of course, there's a number of cities, but none of them are kind of enormous compared to all the rest of them. Whereas here, the city of London is 8 million people, and the closest one is probably Birmingham, and that is nowhere near the population. So yeah, not exactly the same demographics on cities, I guess. But of course, if you're living out rurally, then it is the same either way, to be honest.
Yeah, indeed.
Anyway, going into the miscellaneous and spontaneous news. So Disney apparently says that subscribers are fine. They're fine to just sit through some ads. So Disney Plus is seeing more users subscribe to its $7.99 per month ad-supported tier. So apparently 50% of new subscribers choose the ad-supported tier, and apparently they seem to think that people are good with seeing these ads, and really ads are probably the way forward, but of course, most people don't really like to see these adverts. They just do it because it's slightly cheaper. But of course, Disney will try and spin this as ads are fine, and we can just raise prices and put more ads and make more money, and it's fine. But yeah, of course, that's what Disney want to do as a company. But of course, it makes sense that people will be using the ad-supported tier, but paying for something and then seeing ads, I always feel a bit. I don't always feel great about paying for a service and then seeing adverts on it. It's kind of annoying. Any thoughts, question?
Yeah, I agree with you fully.
Okay, so continuing on to the next story. So there's been a major, apparently according to XDA developers, Skype Insider update with a new UI. So this is a new UI with redesigned message reply UI elements. And apparently the audio messages UI has also been refreshed. So this is some these are some updates to the Skype mobile app when it comes to insiders. So, of course, Skype has been for quite a while having a bit of a identity crisis potentially because of Microsoft Teams and the fact that a lot of people are using Teams and Skype kind of died out after the MSN Messenger era, and of course, Skype took the role of MSN Messenger, but it didn't really ever gain that level of popularity. So Skype is, of course, always trying to modernize and, find new reasons to exist. Of course, there's the Skype to call service where you can call landlines and mobile numbers using Skype. However, that's one of the only real uses people seem to have for it these days. I mean, it's lost its dominance on the front of video calls, and it's lost its dominance on chat. I mean, it never really had much of dominance on the chat space. However, for quite a while, they were the king when it came to video calls. I mean, in the early 2010s, people were Skyping each other or whatever. But now, of course, there's WhatsApp, there's FaceTime, there's all these different options, and of course, now Skype kind of needs to find a way to continue to exist for the Skype department, I guess. But Teams is, of course, the main focus of Microsoft, although that's mainly for the enterprise customers. And, of course, Skype has been around for quite a while, so if Microsoft does decide to kill off Skype, as they do kill off a number of their products, who knows when that will happen. Maybe one day, but for now, Skype still is around, I guess. Have you used Skype recently? Crash, is this? Yeah.
Not recently, no. That's a very interesting case study.
Yeah, it went from like the kind of peak of popularity, kind of, wow, this platform, this video calling, this video calling application is really popular, to now it's just like nobody Skypes each other anymore, and Microsoft just fully adopted Skype and said no more MSN Messenger. Now everybody uses Skype, and that hasn't worked out for them, I don't think. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. They went from a major player to obscurity quickly, like you said, within, what, 10 years?
Yeah, and overall, it just adds to the picture of Microsoft not being that successful on the mobile front. I mean, they're not successful on the video calls, their Windows Phone platform failed, their Edge browser wasn't particularly popular on mobile. Overall, things haven't really worked out much for them on the mobile side. Of course, they're, best known for their PC stuff and their cloud stuff. So I think that's where they're currently focusing their efforts, especially on the cloud. But they still do want to attempt to be a more mobile platform, I guess. A more mobile kind of focused company, I guess. Any thoughts?
Good luck, Microsoft.
Yes, they have failed before, and they will probably fail again. But who knows? Anyway, I was trying to make a bit of a segue there. I was talking a bit about the cloud stuff, because we're moving on to the next story here. It's Microsoft Azure, their cloud platform, introducing Radius. an open source development platform for multi-cloud computing. So this is a open source approach to enable you to run applications across multiple clouds. So this is to make it easier to run the same application over, multiple different platforms that run by different companies. And I don't really know what is really going to, be the advantage for Microsoft here, except from being the developer of it. I guess Azure isn't as popular as AWS, and maybe they want to give people a way of using Azure alongside their existing cloud platform. However, this is a pretty cool development. I always am quite skeptical when it comes to Microsoft and their open source projects. However, this does, who knows whether this is in good faith, but this is a new project that you can check out on GitHub. Microsoft also owns GitHub, so, for quite a while they've been trying to convince people that they will actually be more of an open source company and kind of, release more stuff open source and get rid of the image of them being anti, kind of open source and anti-consumer. So I don't know how that will work out for them. I mean, they've already managed to shake the image quite a bit, so maybe that's good for them. But of course, I don't know where they'll take this. Maybe they'll just try and destroy open source in the future. Who knows? But I think they're doing this on the cloud side because you kind of need an open source solution for something like this. And developers wouldn't accept a proprietary one. Do you have any thoughts, Crash? I mean, historically, Microsoft haven't had the best reputation when it comes to open source,
No, sir.
Right then. I think that is that the last story? Yes, it is. But I'll comment a bit more on it, I think. Of course, in the early 2000s, there was a lot of stuff to do with kind of Microsoft being quite anti-Linux. Steve Ballmer, the previous CEO of Microsoft, sometime in the 2000s, called Linux a cancer. Actually, not Linux, called the GPL, which is the license that Linux is licensed under, a cancer, because everything licensed under the GPL everything licensed under the GPL has to be licensed under a open source license. So basically, if you edit the code, you've got to make your changes open source. So Microsoft viewed this as almost like it spreads, and things that use code from GPL sources, have to adopt that license to some extent. And they viewed that as almost cancerous. But now they've toned down their kind of rhetoric. I mean, some people said it was kind of inappropriate to call, a software solution cancerous, and, not typical of a CEO. But now, of course, they're trying to look like kind of the company of open source, and, it's a kind of era of open source when it comes to applications. But we'll just have to see where it goes, I guess. But yeah, have you got any thoughts, Crash? Last thing.
Sounds like a plan. No, I had never heard of Azure until this story.
Yeah, it's been their cloud platform for a number of years now. I mean, they launched it, and in fact, you can use Linux on Azure. It's a default option. But that's because, yeah, you don't want to pay for Windows Server, and Linux is way more popular on the server space than Windows. So, of course, that's just trying to attract people over. And also, it means that people don't have to pay for Microsoft, Windows Server. But
very good.
But yeah, anyway, let's end the show, guys. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I'll just check the chat. If anybody's saying anything, maybe I'll wait a minute here. There is apparently somebody watching out there. I don't know. Crash, do you have the stream open?
No, sir.
Okay, so it's somebody else out there in the world. So, if you want to comment in the chat, you can. If you want to, I don't know, if you're somebody who I know, you can text me, I guess. Then, but anyway, guys, thanks for watching. You can check out the Discord server. We're always over on Discord every week. So that happens every 7 p.m. Sometimes it's moved a bit forward. Today it was 7:25. Sometimes it's a bit variable. But if you come on over here to the Discord server, I'll turn up. Hopefully some other people will do too. And we can discuss the tech news and just talk about stuff in general. So it happens every Friday, 7 p.m. If you want to join, you can see the link on screen, or if you're, right here, if you're right here, I guess. But yeah, anyway, it's sandrolinux.com/discord if you're, listening to this audio only. So if you want to check out the Discord, then I guess you can just head on over. Of course, my main website is sandrolinux.com. So, you just have to go to /Discord to get this server. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching once again. Like, subscribe, and share, and goodbye.